So you want to buy an investment property, but you have no idea what you're doing, where to buy it, if it's going to make any money, and exactly how to go about it. Well, if you want to learn, watch this video. So there are many different ways that you can make money in real estate investing. So the first way that we're going to talk about would be fixing and flipping. And if you've watched any HGTV, you would know that's when someone goes in, buys a house that's perceivably undervalued, usually needs a lot of work. They put some money into it, some sweat equity, they fix it all up, and then they put it back on the market and they sell the house and they make all kinds of money. Unless they screw up and they don't make all kinds of money and they end up losing money. So that brings us to option number 2, short-term rentals. You may have heard of a little something called Airbnb or perhaps Vrbo. Well, they've taken the industry by storm and made it a lot more accessible for people to be able to rent somebody else's house. So there was a time that you'd go on vacation and your options were really hotels, motels, or family and friends. Well, now you can actually rent somebody's home. And sometimes people just rent out rooms in their house. Other times they rent out houses that they live in for part-time of the year. And last but not least, people buy rental properties that they have the sole purpose of renting for short-term rentals. So it can be highly profitable. It is pretty labor intensive. There's a lot of maintenance involved. And it's definitely not a passive strategy. It's very active. But it is definitely a real estate investing strategy that we could look at. And that brings us to number 3. All right, guys, option number 3. You are going to be a long-term buy and hold real estate investor. Yeah, I know. Not super sexy, is it? You're going to be a landlord. You are going to be Mr. Roper or Mr. Furley or Mrs. Roper, if you prefer. That's a Three's Company reference for those of you who don't know. You're going to be a landlord, unless you decide to hire a property manager. But we're going to assume that you're going to be a landlord. So basically, quite simply, you're going to find a rental property. You're going to put some tenants in place. You're going to get a great group of kids like Jack and Janet and Chrissy and Terry and Sydney, and that's another Three's Company reference. I know, kind of dating myself here. I'm not really that old. Well, I'm kind of old. But either way, it was before my time, but it was still a phenomenal show. I absolutely love it. John Ritter is the best. Now, back to the seriousness. You are going to keep that property for 25, 30 years, essentially. If you pay out the entire mortgage. There are ways you can do it a little quicker, but we'll stick to the basics for now. So ideally, your tenants are going to cover your mortgage costs and all of your other expenses. And at the end of the road, you will have a cash flowing property that cash flows very, very well. And you can either keep it and keep renting it and have a nice little retirement income, or you cash in your chips and you sell it, take the money and run. So either way, pretty good option. And that is long-term renting. If you pay out the entire mortgage, there are ways you can do it a little quicker, but we'll stick to the basics for now. So ideally, your tenants are going to cover your mortgage costs and all of your other expenses. And at the end of the road, you will have a cash flowing property that cash flows very, very well. And you can either keep it and keep renting it and have a nice little retirement income, or you cash in your chips and you sell it, take the money and run.
Okay, so now that you have all this newfound information, we are going to be landlords. We're looking for a buy and hold rental property in the St. John's and surrounding area. So we're going to say Mount Pearl, Paradise, Conception Bay South, St. John's, any of those areas should be sufficient for these type of numbers. We're going to base our purchase on a $400,000 house. Now you can spend less, but for today's example, we're going to use a $400,000 house just to kind of see what the numbers look like. So if you were to buy a house for $400,000, what you need to do here is you need to put down 20%, because the bank is going to want a minimum down payment of 20%, and you're not going to want to put down any more than you have to, so long as you're cash flowing. So with 20% down, you're putting down $80,000 up front. you're going to spend another 3,000, 3,500-ish for your closing costs for legal fees and that sort of stuff. So we're into this property now for, we'll call it 83.5. This type of a property, you are going to be able to get a two-apartment home that has been relatively modernized, freshly renovated, whatever the case may be, for $400,000. It should be turnkey ready. So you're able to move straight in, get tenants in place immediately. There's no renovations required, no windows, no siding, no roof, nothing crazy like that. You don't need to paint the place. I mean, there may be a few little touch-ups involved, but we're just going to say that you're turnkey ready, good to go. So we're going to spend $400,000 buying this house. So what does your expenses look like for this property? Well, I'm glad you asked. Your expenses look like this. Your mortgage payment on a house for $400,000, we're going to use 5.5% for our interest rate, which is pretty average for today's rate. We are going to assume that you are looking at a 30-year amortization schedule, because obviously the longer you stretch it out, the better your cash flow is going to be. So the name of the game for this one is cash flow. If you want to pay it off quicker, there are things you can do, but that's not our main focus today. So a mortgage payment for this house is going to be around $1,820 a month. You are going to have property tax of about $175 monthly. You are going to have homeowners insurance of about $300 a month. You are going to set aside basically a month's rent for vacancy. So that works out to be roughly about 8% a month of what your expected rent should be. You're going to set aside around 2% for repairs and maintenance, because again, this house should be fully ready to roll. You shouldn't really have any expenses coming up in the near future. There will be something, so it would be wise to put away some money. If this wasn't a turnkey ready property, something you've owned for a few years already, I'd probably bump that 2% to 4% of the rent. And if it was a property that you know has got some big maintenance coming up, you're probably going to want to up that to maybe even as high as 8% to kind of, get ready for what's coming. Because as an investor, you hate cash calls. You don't want to be reaching into your own pocket to replace a roof 10 years from now. It's better to put away a little money every month, so when you get to that point, you've got a nice little slush fund. And there are some tips and tricks and things we can do with that little slush fund to maximize its potential as well, but that's another video for another day. So, back at hand. Your total expenses for this property should be about $2,620-ish. So what kind of rent are we going to get for this place? Well, your main floor is going to rent for an extreme low $1,800 to an extreme high of $2,500 a month for a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath with a small rec room, we'll say, in today's market, in a fairly modern home. You are going to get anywhere from, say, $1,000 to maybe $1,300 for a 2-bedroom basement apartment. So we're going to use a blended number. We're going to call it around $3,300 for a combined number between what you're going to get for your main floor and your basement suite, which is pretty much going right now in a newer style home. So once again, your cash flow is all your money coming in minus your expenses, okay? So when you're going to do the math on that, all of the rent coming in is $3,300 we're using. All of the money going out is $2,621.92. That means that after all expenses have been paid, at the end of the month, you have a positive cash flow of $678.08. It's huge. That's a lot of money. That's a car payment. That is groceries. That is money for a family vacation, college fund, whatever you want it to be. It's yours. And it is right there, ready for the taking. Now, how long is it going to take you to get back your money? Well, the beauty of long-term rental is you make money in a few different ways. The first one is the cash flow, which we just went over. Now, for the record, the majority of the country right now does not cash flow positive. So there are investors everywhere buying homes, hoping for mortgage paydown and appreciation at some point in time, knowing that if the interest rates reduce, they will probably cash flow once again, but for now, they're actually losing money every month. We are in a very fortunate situation in our market that we are still able to cash flow because the purchase prices of our homes are still relatively affordable. They don't cash flow as well as they did a few years ago when your interest rates were 2.5%, but even at today's rates, we're using 5.5% over a 30-year term for this example, and we're still cash flowing quite well. Okay, so if the rate was to reduce, it'd be even better. Well, guys, that about wraps it up. I appreciate you sticking with us for the video. I hope you got some value. Once again, if you like what you see, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we'll see what other content we've got coming. If any of you guys want to work with an investor-focused realtor in the St. John's and surrounding area, I'm your guy. Give me a call. I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. There's no charge to speak to me, and I am taking on new clients. So whether you're local or you are overseas or out of province, give me a call. Once again, Robin Doyle, the investor realtor. I'm happy to help. Cheers.